Hi, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. This is the 9th episode of our Vote Her In series with author Rebecca Sive, where we look at the movement to elect our first woman president. Today we are joined by U.S. Senator and presidential candidate Kirsten Gillibrand. You can catch all of the episodes in this series at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com/voteherin or in our regular feed anywhere podcasts are found. Enjoy! Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. This is our 9th episode in the Vote Her In series, on which we partner with author Rebecca Sive. So Rebecca is here with me. Hello, Rebecca.
Good afternoon.
And we have a very special guest here today, Senator from New York and presidential candidate Kirsten Gillibrand.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited you're here. And this is a rare in-person interview for me. Usually these are remote, so this is very exciting. So for any new listeners, Two Broads Talking Politics has been around for about a year and a half, and this was started by me and my co-host Sophie. We were both just sort of Midwestern moms who talked a lot about politics to ourselves and to our families, our understanding husbands, and decided we needed to do a little more and figure out how to help all of our friends do a little more. And so it has grown into what it is today. And Rebecca is going to talk a little bit about what we're doing on this Vote Her In series.
So thank you, Senator. It's an absolute treat for us to be here with you. And thanks again to Denton's, which is hosting us today. I know you spoke earlier with a number of the lawyers here. I had a chance to sit in a little bit and saw there were a lot of guys there, too. So yeah. I was happy about that.
And it was a diverse group. So it was wonderful to get to talk to a lot of young, bright lawyers, which is really the future. So we want to make sure they know what I'm running on and why, and why I think they should support me.
So what we thought we would do, the Voter In series came about because Kelly and I had lunch one day and we were talking, this was shortly after my book, Voter In, was published, and it's about electing a woman president, as you know. And we talked about the idea of just sort of getting this message out there in other contexts, and particularly putting together some kind of an effort that would both educate people about why electing a woman president is so important and inspire people to get involved. And we are, of course, as is Sophie, unabashed partisans of electing a woman president. And so that's what we do every other week. We began the series with some discussion of the general issues, and now you're here with us, just kicking off a wonderful opportunity to speak in person. So we thought, actually, if it's okay with you, we would begin with getting your perspective exactly on that question about why electing a woman president in the United States is so important right now.
I think electing a woman is so important because as women, we have very different life experiences, and we often are very good at listening, bringing people together, finding common ground, and getting things done. And I can't think of a more dysfunctional, corrupt place than Washington. And so I think to change what's happening in this country, we're going to need a president who's brave, a president who will go through fire to do the right thing, someone who will do what's right no matter what, even if it harms her. And right now, we've got a president who actually demeans the vulnerable and punches down. He does it all because he wants us to believe he's strong, but he's not. He's a coward. And so I think we need a president who's brave. And that's who I am. I have stood up to special interest, greed, and corruption my whole career in Washington. I've stood up to the powerful. I've stood up to the Pentagon twice, first over Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and then over sexual violence in the military. I stood up to Congress, first by radical transparency, posting my earmarks and my schedule and my taxes online for all to see, and then passing a law that banned insider trading by members of Congress. And I even stood up to the banks as a member of Congress from New York. When we had the financial collapse, both parties were trying to throw billions at the banks. And I bothered to read the bill, and I saw pretty quickly it was designed to leave the taxpayers holding the bag. So I will be brave. I will do the hard thing. And, you know, when I ran in my first House race, it was a 2-1 Republican district. it was brave to run in that race, but it was even better to win it. And so I won that district twice, the second time by a 24-point margin. So I know I can bring the country together, and I know I can represent the red places, the blue places, and the purple places by being a president for everyone.
So one of the things, about that I certainly think, and Kelly and I have discussed a lot, is the idea that, and this from being a legislator yourself, that it's women public officials who focus on issues and policies of concern to women and girls. And so where I think of the view that will happen with a woman president, and I wonder if, as you've thought about your own platform and the policy issues, and I heard you talk earlier about reproductive rights and about economic issues, could you talk to us and our listeners a little bit about how you see the policy agenda as president generally, but specifically as a woman president who has demonstrated a concern about women and girls and their future?
Mm-hmm. I don't know that all women would focus on women and girls because sometimes we're our own worst enemies and we're apologists for the men. And I think some women who aren't brave would discount some of those issues as not priorities. But that's not who I am. I've always put a very strong women's agenda first because, first of all, we are 52% of the population. So if you're helping women do better, you're helping most Americans, number one. Number two, I think a lot of issues that overwhelmingly and disproportionately affect women are basic human rights and civil rights that are left behind because our legislatures are largely male and largely white. So when you have decision makers who have never been discriminated against, who have white male privilege in every respect, you're not necessarily seeing the problems. We have legislatures across the country who are attacking women's reproductive freedom. Over 30 states right now have tried or have already undermined reproductive rights. And as president, I will only appoint judges and justices who believe that Roe v. Wade is settled precedent. I will codify Roe v. Wade, meaning pass it into law. I will overturn the Hyde Amendment, which is the restriction that federal money can't help low-income women get access to abortion services and health care. And I would guarantee that no matter what state you live in, you have access to reproductive care. But I would also do a very strong economic agenda to help women really achieve their full potential in the workplace. I would raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, index it to inflation, and get rid of tipped wage. I would do that because 2/3 of women, minimum wage workers are women. And so you want the whole economy to grow. I would pass a national paid leave plan, which would allow anybody to stay in the workplace, but provide the needs they have at home, whether it's a new baby or a sick parent or a dying parent or an ill family member. I would fight for universal pre-K and affordable daycare so more women and men, parents, can be in the workplace earning at their fullest. And so some people might say that's a women's agenda, and they'd say it dismissively. I would say, yeah, it's a women's agenda, but it's also an economic agenda. It's also a human rights agenda. It's also about the strength of our economy and our country. It's a competitive agenda. It's an agenda that helps seniors. These are all things that are relevant for a lot of the country. And so I welcome a women's agenda.
When you were talking about being someone who would run through fire to, protect the vulnerable, I mean, I get this image of kind of a mama bear. And like you, I have 2 sons, one of whom is named Theodore, just like you.
That's amazing.
And so I'm really excited to think about not just a woman president, but a president who is a mom and who knows what those issues are, who knows what it's like to raise young kids. You were already a sitting congressperson when you had your second child. And so you know how difficult that can be to go straight back to work and all of that. So can you sort of expand then on this family bill of rights and what the experiences of being a mom bring to knowing the types of things that families of young children really need?
Well, I'm certainly the first presidential candidate in this cycle to put out a comprehensive platform to how to make it easier for families just to survive and thrive. And so it's got 5 principles. The first is a right to a healthy pregnancy and to have a baby. And it needs a couple of things. One, we have to address maternal mortality. We're the worst of all industrialized countries when it comes to maternal mortality rates. And for Black women, the maternal mortality rate is 4 times higher across the country. So I have legislation and a comprehensive approach to make sure our healthcare professionals have better training and then have all the tools they need to respond on an emergency basis in every delivery room. Also, if you're an LGBT couple, having the right to adopt and not having discrimination by adoption agencies around the country. If you need IVF treatments and fertility treatments, mandating that insurers cover it. And if you're a low-income family and want to adopt, making sure you have tax credits so you can actually afford to adopt a child. Second, make sure that first month of that child's life is healthy. We have an idea about baby bundles, which is something they do in Finland, and they do in 5 states. And what it is when you have a child, you take home a box of amazing things that help that baby survive, from the box being a crib to a child carrier to swaddling cloths and diapers and formula. Third idea is making sure we have paid family leave, which I mentioned earlier, so that parents can be providing for their families and be at home for at least 3 months and not have to choose between a paycheck and providing for their family. And 4, affordable daycare and universal pre-K. And that's how you get there. Those key components are what will make it easier to be a parent and to be able to provide for your kids and deal with that daily struggle that parents face, not being able to provide for their kids in the way they want to.
My 4-year-old is just finishing up pre-K, and free pre-K, universal pre-K would have been amazing.
So one of the things we've talked about here, and I wonder, it relates to this Family Bill of Rights and those kinds of issues that really so many millions of women are concerned about, as you and Kelly were discussing. What is your thinking about how we should all come together and organize and communicate with each other about the importance of these kinds of issues and our being steadfast about finding a way to elect a woman president? Are there things that you want to see women voters do, women activists do, that perhaps you haven't seen yet, or you'd like to see more of, or you've observed as you've traveled around?
Yes. So one thing I've observed is that women like to be high information voters. They really want to get to know the candidates, what they stand for. They want to know more. And with 23 candidates, it's confusing, and it's also a bit overwhelming. And so a lot of women that I've met, certainly around the country and in New York, are sitting on the sidelines, which is a problem because there are standards being set by our party about who gets to go on a debate stage. And if all the women are waiting to decide who they want to support, maybe your voice won't be heard when it needs to be heard. So decide who your top 5 are. Decide if you want a woman in the race. If you do, help all the 6 women if you don't want to decide, or pick your top 3 favorites. But start supporting the candidates that you like, because if you don't start supporting them now, they might not make it to the debate stage. Our first debate's in June, followed by July, then September. The standards for the first 2 have a polling requirement, which I have qualified for, and a second low-dollar donor requirement, which I'm not quite there. I'm almost there. But for example, if you want to hear these ideas on the debate stage, you got to go to KirstenGillibrand.com and send something, anything. Even $1 is fine. But some candidates are really, really well funded. And if you want me to compete, send what you can. But send something now. Even if I'm your top 5, that's great. There's no need to decide who you're voting for today. The only decision you need to make is, who do you want to hear from today? And I'm just letting your listeners know that now is the time to weigh in because of the standards. You need to have those high numbers of low-dollar donors to guarantee your spot.
And related to that, can you share with us, I know you talked earlier today and you've talked on other occasions, and I've actually read a bit about this, about the influence your grandmother had on your own interest in politics. And for those who may not have had a grandmother who sort of showed them what to do and how to do it, what advice would you give to our listeners about, well, gee whiz, I really want to do something, and but I don't know what to do, and I don't know the people, and I don't know how to get involved. What would you say to those women in communities all over the place, actually?
So I'll tell you the grandmother story, and then I'll tell you how to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in upstate New York, and my grandmother loved politics. She came from modest means and didn't attend college, and she worked every day of her life. She was a secretary in our state legislature. 75 years ago, when she was 20 years old, women had very little say in politics. So she decided the best way to amplify her voice was to ask all the women she knew to participate in politics. And they became active in campaigns, and they became galvanized and, over time, powerful. In fact, over time, you couldn't get elected in Albany without the blessing of my grandmother and her lady friends.
That was the story I heard, which I absolutely loved, by the way.
It's true. They had so much power accrued because they did all the work. So if you wanted someone to help you with your petitions or go door to door or get your candidate elected, you needed their help. Couldn't do it without them. So I grew up watching her be so engaged in politics as a way to be heard that I learned a couple of life lessons right away. Women's voices really do matter. What we do with our time really matters. Grassroots activism makes all the difference in the world. So in terms of getting involved now, know that your voice matters. Be heard now. Don't wait till election day to be heard. Start getting involved. If there's a campaign you like, if there's a candidate whose message you like, retweet it, repost it, put it on Instagram. Whatever your social media platform is, use it to amplify your voice and the voice of the candidates whose values you share and who you want to move forward. Second, give money. If you have a lot of money, max out at $2,800 to the campaign that you like the best. If you don't, send $5. But more than anything, ask all your friends to participate. All of them. Anybody who's on your Christmas card list, anybody who's on your Hanukkah list, anybody who is on your school community list, anybody who you work with on the bake sales. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Just ask the people in your life. I just heard this podcast from Kirsten Gillibrand. I really liked her. I want her to make the debate stage. Would you help me and send her $5? Because I think that's what's necessary for her to be there. That matters. So we have a lot of power. So use it, and use it always. Don't wait to use it.
And one of the things I would just say to underscore that is women have elected Democratic presidents for the last several elections. So it's in our power to do this and to make those changes, and we should never let anyone tell us otherwise.
Correct. And when you hear a candidate say something you don't like, be heard on that. If you hear a candidate who doesn't support your vision for reproductive freedom, or your vision for LGBTQ equality, or your vision for clean air and clean water, or transparency and accountability, whatever it is, speak out. Do not let candidates get away with selling your rights down the river. Like, don't let someone silence you, and don't let someone demean your priorities, because that's what happens all the time. And we do not need to go along to get along. We need to be heard in this moment. Our democracy and our future is at stake.
You had some great comments the other day in your town hall about women having a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that being about equity.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on that? I loved that so much.
Yeah, it was funny.
And the what about men comment just killed me.
So I was on a Fox News town hall on Sunday, and my host was Chris Wallace. And he wanted to ask about a tweet I put out last December. And it said something like, the future is female and intersectional. And something like, we're just getting started. Something like that. That was basically what it was. And he didn't know what it meant. So he asked, what did you mean by the future is female? And I said, well, it means that we want women to have a seat at the table. It's really important that women's voices are heard. And I had posted that just after the 2018 election. And so we had just elected 120 women who ran for Congress and won, and flipped the House of Representatives because they were so good. So I was really just celebrating the fact that we now have 120 women who have a seat at the table in Congress, and it's going to change what issues are being talked about and what solutions are being offered. And that's a good thing. And for whatever reason, he said, well, what about the men? And I
couldn't believe it.
I said, well, they're already there. Don't you know? They're already at the table.
Exactly.
We have most of Congress is male. 75% of Congress, more than 75% of Congress is male. Most of it's white male. So yes, you're already there. And he thought that was funny, and he didn't realize. And then he wanted to know about intersectionality. And I explained to him about how many people are discriminated against for more than one reason. If they're a Black woman, it's an intersectional issue because they're discriminated on the basis of race and sex. If you're a Black woman who has a disability, you're going to be discriminated on 3 bases. And it's about making sure all those voices are being heard too, that there are challenges that people face who should also have a seat at the table because they are being discounted. I have privilege as a white woman, and so I need to be concerned that Black voices are being heard, that Hispanic voices are being heard, that the disability community is being heard, and that's my job to lift them up. And I know that. And so that's why I think intersectionality is important.
So we know you have many engagements, and we really appreciate your stopping by. And perhaps we could just close with something you said earlier today, which I found so inspiring. And I know Kelly and I wanted to share it with the listeners. You said that we need a president who is brave. And so we thank you for being brave as well as for being here, and looking forward to staying in touch and working hard together to elect our first woman president.
Brave wins. KirstenGillibrand.com.
Absolutely. You. And as always, we'll put a link up to your website on our website when we post the episode.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
The Vote Her In segment is a collaboration of Two Broads Talking Politics and author Rebecca Sive. Our theme song is called Are You Listening, off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.